Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Pastor Jacob Swenson. I am the pastor of two Lutheran churches here in the great state of North Dakota. We've been going for a long while through Luther's Large Catechism, and we have a lot of it ahead of us, but we get to hit a milestone today. Today, we are going to finish the commandments. We've been going for a long time. You've been sticking with it. You've been hearing all this about the commandments. Today, we're going to finish the commandments, and tomorrow, we get to start with the gospel. We get to start with the creed, which is going to be awesome. So, stick around for today to hear the close of the commandments, because there's still a lot of important things for us to learn yet. So today we're gonna hit the close of the commandments, and then tomorrow we turn the page, literally and figuratively, as we go into the creed, which is good stuff. We pick up today in paragraph 311. And if you've been following along, I'm more or less keeping to the daily Book-of-Concord readings that are found on book-of-concord.org or in Concordia, the Reader's Edition. But today, I think we're going to do a little extra, and we'll just read the whole conclusion to the Ten Commandments. So we start in paragraph 311. Now we have the Ten Commandments, a summary of divine teaching about what we are to do in order that our whole life may be pleasing to God. Everything that is to be a good work must arise and flow from and in this true fountain and channel. So apart from the Ten Commandments, no work or thing can be good or pleasing to God, no matter how great or precious it is in the world's eyes. Let us see now what our great saints can boast of their spiritual orders and their great and mighty works. They have invented and set these things up, while they let these commandments go, as though they were far too insignificant or had long ago been perfectly fulfilled. I am of the opinion, indeed, that here one will find his hands full and will have enough to do to keep these commandments: meekness, patience, love toward enemies, chastity, kindness, and other such virtues and their implications. But such works are not of value and make no display in the world's eyes, for these are not peculiar and proud works. They are not restricted to particular times, places, rites, and customs. They are common, everyday household works that one neighbor can do for another. Therefore, they are not highly regarded. But the other works cause people to open their eyes and ears wide. Men aid this effect by the great display, expense, and magnificent buildings with which they adorn such works, so that everything shines and glitters. There they waft incense, they sing and ring bells, they light tapers and candles, so that nothing else can be seen or heard. For when a priest stands there in a surplice garment embroidered with gold thread, or a layman continues all day upon his knees in church, that is regarded as a most precious work which no one can praise enough. But when a poor girl tends a little child and faithfully does what she is told, that is considered nothing. For what else should monks and nuns seek in their cloisters? Look, is not this a cursed overconfidence of those desperate saints who dare to invent a higher and better life and estate than the Ten Commandments teach? To pretend, as we have said, that this is an ordinary life for the common man, but theirs is for saints and perfect ones. The miserable blind people do not see that no person can go far enough to keep one of the Ten Commandments as it should be kept. Both the Apostles' Creed and the Lord's Prayer must come to our aid, as we shall hear. By them, power and strength to keep the commandments, is sought and prayed for and received continually. Therefore all their boasting amounts to as much as if I boasted and said, to be sure, I don't have a penny to make payment with, but I confidently will try to pay 10 florins. Right, so if we're following Luther's train of thought, if you've been listening to our way through these 10 commandments, Luther again returns to this idea that the monks and the nuns and all the monastics in the cloisters have invented this idea that they are doing these good works for God that are better than the works of the common man, that sacrificing the Mass, that praying at all hours of the day, at starving yourself and flogging yourself in devotion to Christ are all better works than the common man does. And Luther says, well, if we want to talk about good works, let's talk about the good works that God actually commands, like the 10 Commandments. And now here he says the whole world shuns the 10 Commandments because what God commands in the 10 Commandments is that we love our neighbors as ourselves, that we look out for our neighbor, we help them preserve what is theirs, whether it's their body, their spouse, their property, we help protect their reputation. These are things that are done in daily life and are done without great pomp and circumstance. And we all know that's what the world loves. So Luther is saying all these works that the monastics do, and this is medieval Roman Catholicism, so we'll talk about the relationship between then and now later, but Luther is saying we should be worried that we already have too much to do in the 10 Commandments. This is why we need the Apostles' Creed and the Lord's Prayer, where we get some gospel to go with this law. Paragraph 317. All this I say and teach, so that people might get rid of the sad misuse that has taken such deep root and still clings to everybody. In all estates upon earth, they must get used to looking at these commandments only, and to be concerned about these matters. For it will be a long time before they will produce a teaching or estate equal to the 10 Commandments, because they are so high that no one can reach them by human power. Whoever does reach them is a heavenly, angelic person, far above all holiness of the world. Just occupy yourself with them. Try your best. Apply all power and ability. You will find so much to do that you will neither seek nor value any other work or holiness. Let this be enough about the first part of the common Christian doctrine, both for teaching and urging what is necessary. In conclusion, however, we must repeat the text which belongs here. We have presented this already in the first commandment in order that we may learn what pains God requires so that we may learn to teach and do the 10 Commandments. Exodus 20. I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. As we have heard above, this appendix was primarily attached to the first commandment, yet it was laid down for the sake of all the commandments, since all of them are to be referred and directed to it. Therefore, I have said that this also should be presented to and taught to the young. Then they may learn and remember it, and we may see what must move and compel us to keep these 10 Commandments. This part is to be regarded as though it were specially added to each command, so that it dwells in and runs through them all. Now there is included in these words, as said before, both an angry, threatening word and a friendly promise. These are to terrify and warn us. They are also to lead and encourage us to receive and highly value His Word as a matter of divine sincerity. For God Himself declares how much He is concerned about it and how rigidly He will enforce it. He will horribly and terribly punish all who despise and transgress his commandments. Also, he declares how richly he will reward, bless, and do all good to those who hold them in high value and gladly do and live according to them. So God demands that all our works proceed from a heart that fears and regards God alone. From such fear the heart avoids everything that is contrary to his will, lest it should move him to wrath. And on the other hand, the heart also trusts in him alone, and from love for him does all he wants. For he speaks to us as friendly as a father, and offers us all grace and every good. This is exactly the meaning and true interpretation of the first and chief commandment, from which all the others must flow and proceed. So this word, "You shall have no other gods before me," in its simplest meaning, states nothing other than this demand: you shall fear, love, and trust in me as your only true God. For where there is a heart set in this way before God, the heart has fulfilled this commandment and all the other commandments. On the other hand, whoever fears and loves anything else in heaven and upon earth will keep neither this nor any of the commandments. So then all the Scriptures have everywhere preached and taught this commandment, aiming always at these two things: fear of God and trust in him. The prophet David especially does this throughout the Psalms, as when he says, "The Lord takes pleasure in those who fear him, and those who hope in his steadfast love." He writes as if the entire commandment were explained by one verse, as if to say, "The Lord takes pleasure in those who have no other gods." So the first commandment is to shine and give its splendor to all the others. Therefore, you must let this declaration run through all the commandments. It is like a hoop in a wreath, joining the end to the beginning and holding them all together. Let it be continually repeated and not forgotten, as the second commandment says, so that we fear God and do not take his name in vain, for cursing, lying, deceiving, and other ways of leading men astray or trickery. But we make proper and good use of his name by calling upon him in prayer and praise and thanksgiving, derived from love and trust according to the first commandment. In the same way, such fear, love, and trust is to drive and force us not to despise his word, but gladly to learn it, hear it, value it wholly, and honor it. So this teaching continues through all the following commandments toward our neighbor. Everything is to flow from the first commandment's power. We honor father and mother, masters and all in authority, and are subject and obedient to them, not for their own sake, but for God's sake. You are not to regard or fear father or mother, nor should you do or skip anything because you love them. But note what God would have you do, what he will quite surely demand of you. If you skip that, you have an angry judge. But if you do the work, you have a gracious Father. Again, do your neighbor no harm, injury, or violence, nor in any way oppress him with regard to his body, wife, property, honor, or rights. All these things are commanded in their order, even though you may have a chance and cause to do wrong and no person would rebuke you. But do good to all men. Help them and promote their interest in every way and wherever you can, purely out of love for God and to please him. Do this in the confidence that he will abundantly reward you for everything. Now you see how the first commandment is the chief source and the fountainhead that flows into all the rest. Note again, all return to that first commandment and depend upon it. So beginning and end are fastened and bound to each other. This is always profitable and necessary to teach the young people. Admonish them and remind them of it, so that they may be brought up not only with blows and compulsion like cattle, but in the fear and reverence of God. Let this be considered and laid to heart, that these things are not human games, but are the commandments of the divine majesty. He insists on them with great seriousness. He is angry with and punishes those who despise them. On the other hand, he abundantly rewards those who keep them. In this way, there will be a spontaneous drive and a desire gladly to do God's will. Therefore, it is not meaningless that it is commanded in the Old Testament that we should write the 10 Commandments on all walls and corners, yes, even on our garments. This is not for the sake of merely having them written in these places and making a show of them. The Jewish people did that. But it is so that we might have our eyes constantly fixed on them. We should have them always in our memory. Then we might do them in all our actions and ways. Then everyone may make them his daily exercise in all cases, and every business and transaction, as though they were written in every place wherever he would look, indeed wherever he walks or stands. Then there would be enough opportunity, both at home and in our own house and abroad with our neighbors, to do the 10 Commandments, so that no one would need to run far to find them. From this it again appears how highly these 10 Commandments are to be exalted and extolled above all estates, commandments, and works that are taught and done apart from them. For here we can boast and say, let all the wise people and saints step forth and produce, if they can, a single work like these commandments. God insists on these with such seriousness. He commands them with his greatest wrath and punishment. Besides, he adds such glorious promises to them that he will pour out upon us all good things and blessings. Therefore, they should be taught above all others, and be valued precious and dear as the highest treasure given by God. Here ends the 10 Commandments in Luther's Large Catechism. And I know we've been going for almost 18 minutes now, so this is a little bit long. But notice what Luther did there with the close of the commandments. The commandments form like a wreath, where the close of the commandments brings us back to the first, to have no other gods. And the first commandment is the source of all the other commandments. And so Luther would have us learn from this, the close, that all the commandments are related, and the proper motivation for, doing the commandments is because we love God. And because we love God and God loves us, he leads us to then love our neighbor. Right? And so all the commandments form a circle or a ring or a wreath. Now we're going to pause here and take some time, after you listen to this to digest, think about, the things that we've talked about over the last 10 commandments, and drop me a line. Send me an email, trinitystjohn@outlook.com. Find us on Facebook. What is it? Facebook.com/St. John Hillsborough. Send me a message. Tell me whether you've liked this. If you want a format shift or anything like that, I'd love to hear from you. Tomorrow, we're going to start the Creed. Get excited. I'll see you then.